Actually, I don't plan on saying anything.
I'm gonna switch my hats around from CFO to TA to IT director. We'll get them all going tonight. All right, we are on YouTube. Yay. Oh, I have a black screen again. That's making.
I can see it just fine there.
Okay. Oh, am I gonna block you though when I sit?
Don't worry about it.
You right?
If I have to, I'll go on Zoom.
Can I just duck under the table? Is that cool? I'll just stay there.
Worst comes to worst, I'll just go on Zoom and look at the document there.
Okay, it's HDMI cable. Oh, yeah. I just got my computer on there. Okay. With my oddly black screen.
No, you have to do all this when you signed up for TA, did you?
I should have read the bylaw a little more closely. They gave me 5 titles and gone, that's not a compliment. That's a death sentence.
What I want to know is where's the warmth?
Mhm.
When is the
This
spring
is a
warmth going
really,
to?
I know, and this is that weird time of year where
I know.
sometimes the heat comes on when you want it cold and then it's freezing when you want it warm.
That icy rain we had on Monday
Yeah, that
was
was,
really
that
unpleasant.
was terrible.
And of course, did I bring my umbrella into work with me?
Well, of course not,
No.
because I never had mine with me when I needed it.
For our budget. Is this the right form, Victoria? Victoria, is this the right one?
Yep, so
Awesome.
this distance on the road.
Oh, I'll make it bigger. Don't you worry. I just want to make sure I had the right one
I wasn't
first.
blaming you, it's just that that's how it is with me.
I know you were.
Yeah, we can edit that around however we need to. It's not the final copy of anything.
Look like I'm hot.
Two weeks in a row, huh? There you go. I've seen you guys more than my wife, okay? I'll leave it at that.
Oh, great.
Oh, I actually printed off.
I didn't have a chance to print it.
I should have called her. Do you want a pretty one in color?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, okay. Might as well since I printed it.
Oh, and you know what I want?
Who else am I missing?
Okay, sorry about that. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, it's like church.
Oh, okay. Have that scar.
Good, how are you?
I love that scar. How are you?
Well, too.
We're the committee that I command to meet you.
Thank you guys for your help. Appreciate it. signing in. I was trying to tech and sign in. So, Mary, that's a copy of last night's presentation.
This is what you sent over
The
today?
school was kind enough to send over. Yep. Scott asked me if I would make hard copies for everyone.
Well, I'm glad I didn't try to make a hard copy.
I tried,
I
couldn't,
too, which I.
my printer
did
decided not to
so-
cooperate.
I don't have a color printer. I keep thinking about it, but.
I do, and it's always worked perfectly till about
So you need it.
6 days ago. I won't work at all.
Do you?
Have one, and I haven't used it in over a year because last year when I upgraded through Spectrum, my modem and my router, it will not communicate with the printer. I've had
Perfect.
2 computer people try to work it. And
That's really awesome.
it's not an old.
Well
printer.
enough. It's not your fault. It's,
Well, I was trying to put beyond me so that I would be in your way.
You're not too bad as, we can,
Can you see it okay?
it'll be good
How's
enough.
that?
it'll be fine,
Hi. We have.
I can't see the sign. I'm sitting there.
My eyes still haven't adjusted from cataract surgery, so I
have
can
the
see barely anything. I'm mid-February and I don't have a new prescription yet. That's no big deal. It'll work out eventually. It's frustrating as hell.
Oh,
And everybody has a hard copy of
I-
last night's
I would go out of my
presentation.
mind.
I have one extra. One, no, put my extra one over there. I think, Mary, did you get one or is that your copy over there? Oh, I gave you one? Perfect.
You got it all together there. No problem.
Did I lose my pen?
You can tell the vision, look at the size of the font I use.
However you get it done.
I'll bring her.
I could actually blow it up more and feel better about it, you know.
Yeah.
But I need a second screen. And I suppose across.
One of those contraptions that some people have.
Oh, yeah.
Brother-in-law's an engineer. and he's-
Almost everyone has those now. Who spends a lot of time. People's in the library are here, right?
They sure are. We're ready to go
Yeah.
whenever you are.
I'm
All right,
content.
we'll get, all set.
All set.
All right, call to order Berlin Finance Committee meeting. Okay, first item, let's just cover the minutes from last time. Do we have a motion for the minutes for last week's meeting?
Do you want to read our little?
Oh, that's right. Open session public meetings are subject to being recorded. Your image and voice will be recorded. We have a,
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I second it.
okay, any other discussion on the minutes? No, there are a little bit more with all the votes. All right, roll call, Scott, aye.
Mary, I.
Heidi, I.
Cliff, eye.
All right, just before we bring up the library, do you just want to, we'll do the library first and then we'll give a moment for any public comments. We can do that after the library. All right, so let's bring the library forward.
So,
Victoria.
I just wanted to start, I know this was kind of last minute addition to budget conversations. Wanted to thank you all for having us here tonight and starting this conversation, whatever way it ends up going. I think it's an important one to start getting the information out about why we are asking for more staffing and what impact that has on our operations. So a quick reminder of what our minimum requirements are to be certified by the state every year. Our appropriations need to equal the previous 3 years plus the average of the previous 3 years, plus a 2.5% increase. We have to spend a minimum of 19.5% of our budget on circulating materials. Both of those we meet every year. We plan for it in the budget. There's been no problems. We also need to be open 15 hours a week at minimum. And this is where the problems are starting. We are open 33 hours a week. We don't currently have the staffing to continue operating at that level. And I want to be clear that this isn't a sudden problem that's a result of this year's budget or even last year's budget or anything like that. I think it's a problem that started however many years ago when the schedule was set and when we got to this staffing level. We only have 46 hours of desk staff, not including myself. I cover the circulation desk sometimes, but it takes a lot away from my bigger duties like managing the budget and finding grants and things like that. So we have 2 18-hour-a-week positions and 1 10-hour-a-week position. We're on 2 floors, so that means we need 66 hours of coverage a week to have 1 person on each floor every hour that we're open. So we are short 20 hours of staff time. So that's where we get into our requests for additional staff. We are asking for a increase for our youth services position to bring them to 30 hours a week and an additional 10-hour per week library assistant. We're looking at what our schedule is right now. If we don't have additional staff, we need to drop to probably at least 20 hours a week, maybe all the way down to our minimum of 15 to be safely staffed. The amount of times we have 1 person in the library, the amount of times at the children's room is unstaffed. It's a huge liability for the town, for the people in the building. Somebody gets hurt, a patron or a staff member, and nobody's around to witness that. Nobody's around to help them. That's just a big issue, and it's a problem for just service in general. We can't give people the level of service that they should expect from us if we don't have the staff available to do that. So that is why we have a survey out right now to look at our hours. We also want to make more accessible hours. Our schedule is probably not great. That's a bigger problem for me and the trustees to address, but we're doing a twofold purpose survey to figure out what hours we can feasibly do and what hours people want so that we can provide better service. But the more staffing we have, we can stay closer to what we are currently operating at. Did I miss anything? I don't think so. Okay.
Sounds good.
If I could add one thing,
Yeah.
if you don't mind, and I probably should have started with this, so I apologize. The the select board on Monday evening did take a look at the supplemental funding requests as they had not looked at them at all. The library request, as Victoria just outlined, for just those staffing to maintain the current levels of hours that the building is opened amounts to $26,612, which the select board, after having made almost $250,000 in cuts, did recommend approving. However, part of this is that there is an offset on the expenditure side potentially that I think Victoria is going to explain. And that is a nuance we haven't discussed here. And that's why I wanted Lynette and Victoria to come forward before you.
So just on the supplemental, Victoria, in the budget document that was submitted earlier this year, there's 2 of them, one at 11,000, one at 15. So the 15 is the youth.
Yeah.
And then the other one is
11,000 would be for a 10-hour
10
a week
the 10-hour
library
position.
assistant. Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to get the numbers.
Yep.
in
Yeah,
front of me.
absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, so we went back and took another look at our budget, which I sent Kristen a little
I'll pull that
document. So this is our budget request as we submitted it, just as a little refresher. So it'd be 128,202 for wages. And then whatever it was, 45,970 for expenses. And again, that total, the 174,172, that's our minimum amount to meet state aid requirements and be certified. So when we went to I'll let Kristen finish writing.
Oh, sorry.
Nope, you're good.
Okay.
We got 3
got it.
jobs.
That's all
All
right.
right, so the next tab over.
Oh, next tab.
Yeah. I added in the supplemental request to the wages, which would bring it up to the $154,814. So then we could look at our expenses again. I think there's a couple of places where we could, well, I think right away we would be able to take that 760 out of our meetings line item. And plan on funding that out of our state aid account or one of our revolving accounts. To bring our total down a little bit. So I don't know, Kristen, if you just want to edit this as we talk and if that's not,
Sure. So
Putting
we're
too much on your
taking,
plate.
nope, that's all right. So take the 760 out here.
yeah.
Okay,
And I don't know if you want to scroll over a little bit to
sure.
the right. I know it's a big document, so it's hard to get everything on the screen. But yeah, down, you go down a little,
Oh, sorry, it scrolled back on me.
that MER line. Is I calculated the 19.5% that we need to meet. Again, the minimum expense requirement based on our total budget. So that is 19.5% of our total expense budget with supplemental funding in it. And then I took out things that get paid for from other sources, so that 19.5% doesn't have to fully come from our budget, from our town appropriations. Things like the museum passes that the Friends pay for. Part of our CW Mars network fees count towards digital content, so that counts towards that expense requirement. So we're at about $1,700 that we get from other sources that brings our counts towards our expense requirement, so brings our portion of that down. Sorry, I'm talking in circles, but so what we really need to meet is that 37,282. Now, we recognize that this is a tight budget year, and that suddenly asking for an extra $30,000 in light of everybody else making cuts isn't ideal. So we talked about ways that we could offset that a little bit. We can ask the Friends to contribute some more materials to the library. We can plan on spending more out of our state aid account, our video fines account, our donations accounts to offset those costs. So we've ended at, I think if you change our other supplies line, that 38,000 to
Yep.
33,000.
Okay,
That brings our total expense down to 195. It also works out a little bit in our favor because that ends up bringing our expense requirement down.
so you're going from now 195,024 and you were adding 27 almost, but now you're at 17. Sorry, I'm saying it backwards. You're going from 174, 172 to 195,24, which you're able to recoup about $7,000-ish off of that supplemental funding request by cutting the expenses. Is that
Yes.
accurate?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's where we came to. Definitely open to talking about it if you all are. But like I said, I just wanted to at least get this conversation started and let people know. So, again, if we do have to cut hours, it's not a total surprise across the town. And I don't want it to seem like it's a give us staff or we cut the hours. It's just it's an issue that we've, I think, been ignoring for too long, and it's time to face facts.
What is the total increase then with the wages and wages
Um,
and expenses?
So it's going from before it was 174, 172 to 195,024. Someone wants to do that math,
That's about 20,000.
give or take. Yep. And the supplemental funding request was 26,612. So you were able to shave a little over $6,000 off of it.
I do want to make sure that it's clear that going up to 30 hours for the youth services is in health insurance. Makes it a health insurance position.
Okay, so one of the 18 hour per week positions would go to, what, 33 hours
We'd go to 30.
or to 30?
So then it would be benefits eligible.
Okay.
Yeah, right now our children's area can't be fully staffed because the children's librarian is only there 18 of the 33 hours that are open.
And I would echo the liability issue. I run into this before with in another community, and we actually had a mechanism to close the children's area, but you really should not be operating without someone in that area. That is a safety issue. That is a concern if our insurance company, were aware that they would not be happy, they would tell us to close it down.
Yeah,
So-
even if it's just a staff member, like.
Right,
I have
someone.
One staff member there in those lovely stairs that we deal with
Yes.
alone.
We don't want
Yeah.
anything to happen to anyone.
Yeah.
So.
In most libraries, this came up on a library director listserv a while ago about minimum staffing policies. And most libraries have at least 2 staff members in the building at all times, or else they close.
Hmm.
So,
Our physical layout isn't ideal for that because you can't see each other, so it's
Right.
like-
yeah.
it's
I
almost
mean,
easy
one
to
person
close.
on each floor is fairly manageable because they're small floors, so one person can see
Yeah.
most places, and we'll aim to have 3 people in the building at a time, and it really needs to be at least 2. 2 desk staff. We of course have the pages, but they're wonderful and they help us out a lot, but I'm not putting the high schoolers in charge of public safety.
No.
No offense to our high school students, but
Insurance wouldn't be too
they
keen on
get
that.
paid minimum
There,
wage.
that-
They don't want to do that anyway.
No,
Yeah.
no, it's
Yeah.
little beyond what you pay them for.
And I mean, there is room to talk about bringing our expense budget down. I'll be clear about that. But the more we cut into our state aid accounts, as we have these capital projects on the horizon and discussions about what happens with our building, leaving those accounts as intact as possible is going to help us bring those costs down in the future. But it's definitely open to a conversation if that helps anything.
All right, do you have any other questions?
No.
Yeah, don't have any more questions. I think we have enough information so we'll look at with the rest of the budget.
Of course.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Scott, before you go into public comment, would it be helpful at all if I provided a review of the school budget hearing last night?
Sure, yes.
The select board chair and myself were online at the school hearing last night, and I can give a brief summary. I did have the opportunity today to speak with the superintendent and the finance director. And they had let us know that it was a little bit fuzzy when I saw some of the numbers. So I did get one number wrong in the summary that I sent you. The Tohoto OPEB number is actually 15,000, not 5,000. I missed the one on the presentation.
Details.
So it does count. It's a little more money. So the reduction in the operating assessment would be about $5,000 per school. So for the Berlin's portion, 5,000 at BMS, as well as approximately of the 15,000 for Tohoto. The reduction in capital at BMS is to the $237,000 that was recommended by the capital committee, which would fund the elevator controls project, as well as the camera project. And because of, I like to call this funky math, but the way that the regional agreement works and the way the splits work, and constraints that Boylston had as well, when they put the capital in on the Tohoto side, our capital committee had actually recommended funding the first 2 items on the list, but of course, that's a pot of money that is given to the district for them to use however they so see fit in terms of what they would spend the capital on. And the way that it worked out with the formulas and all was to put $25,000 toward furniture for the middle school, of which our contribution would be around 9,000 in the budget that you have in the drive, which I'll pull up in a little bit. I just put that in as 10,000 just to be safe. So you're talking a total of $247,000 for capital. The capital committee had recommended up to 323,000, so that is a reduction over what capital had recommended. And I know that the FinCom had recommended a $207,000 cut to the operating budget. That has come down by $10,000. I listened to a lot of very well presented information about how those cuts would impact the schools. And I have to say, I very much appreciated the fact that the district took the time to take the town's feedback and our financial constraints into account and prepared a budget that, you know, addressed those constraints and showed what it would mean if they were to cut out the $207,000 that the FinCom was requesting. And in the handout that I gave you this evening, the schools were gracious enough to send it over. If you turn to, sorry, the page numbers got cut off, but it looks like page 5. Page 4. It actually talks about what it would mean to go above the March 11 cuts that were already made at that budget hearing and the positions that would be impacted. And I have to say, in looking this over, I do believe that that is a significant impact. And this is the town administrator's recommendation. Obviously, this has to be put forth to the select board and the FinCom as well. But as your chief financial officer, it's my duty to put forth a recommendation. And I very much feel that the schools have heard our budgetary constraints. It is certainly not a matter of not wanting to provide the funding by any means. It is a matter of the fact that we are concerned about tax increases for the residents and where they have faced them the past couple of years. And we are constrained in our capital because we have spent a lot of free cash on capital in the past couple of years. However, in watching the presentation, going through all of the materials and looking at what the impact would be, my recommendation is to support the school committee's budget that was presented last evening with the cuts that were recommended. That's all I have.
When you say they're recommended, can you
The one, I'm sorry,
articulate those?
I should be clear that with what I discussed at the beginning with the capital going down to 237 for BMS, the capital going down to 9 for the middle school furniture at Tohoto, and the $5,000 reduction at BMS and at Tohoto from the OPEB funding that they were looking to make a reduction from. I realize it's not the full way there, but it is a significant reduction in capital. And I believe it's important, if we possibly can, to go to town meeting unified and in agreement. We have not been in the past couple of years, and part of my issue has been that we didn't have the information. And when we asked what the impact would be if we cut money, we didn't receive an answer. And I grill all of the town department heads on what's this dollar for? What does it mean? I need a justification. We've cut a significant amount, as I mentioned, almost 250,000. The select board recommended cutting from the town's budget. The FinCom has supported already a number of those cuts. I feel that we've done the due diligence on our side. And in fact, I'm a little bit nervous about how razor thin some of those line items are. But I understand, you know, that we are all up against budgetary constraints. So that is my recommendation.
I just wanted to clarify something you had said earlier. So they've gone before the capital planning committee,
Yes.
and the capital planning committee initially had approved what on the capital planning items for Tohoto and BMS.
So capital planning initially approved, if you turn to a little further on in the slide 14, I do have numbers, okay. They approved for Berlin Elementary, replacing the elevator controls at a cost of $192,000 and adding / replacing cameras at a cost of $45,000, which made the total capital recommendation, 237,000. So there was agreement. I know the school is going to take their final votes on the numbers tomorrow. They did take votes last night on proposed cuts. And the proposal was to meet the 237,000 that was recommended by the capital committee. Tohoto is on slide 16. And that is the middle school furniture request. Capital had actually recommended funding, I believe it was 86,000. Let me give you the exact amount. They had recommended funding $86,002, which was the first two items on the Tohoto list, which was the middle school furniture, the town's portion, and the town's portion of the auditorium projector and controller. So they've come down even lower than what capital recommended.
Okay, but let me just clarify that. So they recommended based on the assumption that the middle school furniture was 206,000 total and 35,000 for the projector and controller, where our share would have been 86,000. And the cutbacks on this is now is to meet the Boylston's requests.
Correct, and they've scaled it back to $25,000 in furniture.
And only 25,000 in furniture, and our share is
9,000.
approximately 35%. Okay, so we initially approved our share, which would have been 86,000 on what, $241,000, and that has been cut back to 25,000, where our share is approximately 9,000.
That is
Is that
correct.
correct? Okay.
That is my understanding. Again, the actual vote on the final numbers will take place tomorrow at noon. But this is the capital plan.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions on that?
Just so I understand, this PowerPoint we're looking at is the district presentation. So we don't have, did the school committee not vote? I
They
couldn't attend.
made votes on recommended cuts, but not the numbers. So they actually, so that nothing was, misconstrued with regards to the math, which I can certainly appreciate as someone who's done numbers on the fly and broke my budget last week. They are going to do the math and make the recommendation. My understanding is based on what the school committee had voted on last night. They're going to do the numbers and bring that forth for a final vote tomorrow.
Okay, so they had or I'm kind of confused on this. The recommended cuts being what was listed as of the March 11th. So I'm looking at slide 5 in yellow.
Scott, I had a similar question. Is cut from what?
Yes,
That's,
it's
there's
very vague.
Okay, so on slide 5, the recommended cut in addition to the March 11th was the $5,000 OPEB contribution
So cut from what? From
from
the earlier
Berlin's
version of the
operating assessment,
from the earlier version of the budget, for the March 11th?
from the March 11th budget.
budget, cut from
Yes,
that.
cut an
budget.
additional $5,000 off of the March 11th voted number. For
Additional
operating.
to what? I'm trying, it doesn't,
Yeah, I think this is the confusing
What am
part.
I'm not, I'm
So-
missing it. I apologize.
So is it the first yellow line, the total March 11th, 2025? The 5,000 is to that additional 304,435 number? Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay, so the number we're working off of at the moment of what at least the administration has presented is the basically off from March 11th. And
plus that OPEB line item.
plus
So
the OPEB line item. Okay.
I see what you're asking now. So slide 5 was what I was referring to in my little spiel that I gave at the beginning, which was they actually presented a budget, what it would look like if they went down to the reduction numbers requested by the towns and what that would mean in additional cuts.
okay, so we have two levels here where we're talking about cuts. So is our baseline the February 11 budget?
The March 11th budget is the,
No. So the baseline for fiscal 26, we started with the February 11 proposal. because we talk about eliminating things and then we come to March 11, and we have additional cuts. I'm trying to figure out.
Okay,
I like to know what the basis is, and this is one of my overarching issues as I look at the numbers around the schools. Is we have a couple of years, we really don't know much about what things cost, what we spent on what. The numbers aren't clear.
well, and I understand the challenge. So but I, as we've said, there's some things that may remain unknown about the past, right? And they're doing their best to try to recalculate that and figure out, but they started fresh, if you recall, the last meeting that we had, and actually built the costs from the bottom up, not based off of 24, but actually, or 25, but actually starting fresh on 26.
So I was working on the assumption that we didn't do zero-based budgeting. Am I wrong? I mean, I think there is a basis in fiscal 25 going into building this 26 budget. That's my point.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's why I was scratching my head, we'll cut from what,
Oh, I'm sorry. So the $304,435 were the cuts that were proposed as part of the March 11th budget.
Right.
So those were proposed from the earlier version 2.0, I believe it was called, of the budget.
Oh, okay.
So that was, they came to us with a couple iterations. We had the first draft that came to us back in December, then they came to us in February.
Mhm.
And then what they actually voted March 11th for Berlin Memorial was another 304,435 in cuts.
Okay. They voted.
Does that make sense? I'm sorry, I didn't fully understand your question.
But cuts from
From
operating budget in 25, cuts from a proposal in December.
the
cuts
proposal in February.
in February.
Yep.
Okay.
And mind you, this is my best understanding. I am speaking to somebody else's budget, so you kind of have to bear with me a little bit. And Al is not here to answer questions this evening. He's here for,
Got it.
moral
Understood.
support, if you will.
Yeah.
Okay, so do we have any more questions on that summary? If not,
Slide
well,
five.
we'll have more time to discuss,
Yeah. Okay.
but do we just want to move to let anybody do a public comment?
Yeah.
Sure.
Who will be our timekeeper? There is any.
Not me, I'm doing
So
minutes.
the recommendation is 3 minutes. They'd be able to have for comment for an individual, no more than we'll go with the select board's usual of no more than 30 minutes total. And again, it will just be your comments. There'll be no questions or answers for those, so you could just speak. So we'll ask anybody who wants to come forward. You have to come forward and come up to the table.
They need to identify.
Yes.
Yes, they do need to identify themselves.
So I'll have to sit, but they won't be able to hear you online if you don't. Speak into the mic.
So it looks like nobody's. Sure. Are you going to be?
Yes, absolutely. We don't bite, I promise.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Who's our 3-minute
Sure.
timer?
Heidi, good to go?
As soon as she
Okay.
introduces herself, I will.
Absolutely. My name is Lauren Cooney. I live on South Street here in Berlin.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and thank you for the work that you do. I had the opportunity to attend the school committee last night, and I do want to kind of second what you shared. And that is what we heard, the second round of proposed cuts and what that would mean for our schools, particularly Berlin Memorial. The presentation included the concept of cutting a second grade teacher to create one second grade class. There are currently 27 children in the first grade class. I know them very well. I have a first grader. So there is a direct impact, obviously, to me. I know these students. They're lovely, they're wonderful, they're learning and they're flourishing. At the same time that we saw a potential cut to the second grade teacher, we saw that there was the possibility of cutting the literacy and the math tutors, the folks where they're getting the extra help that they're taking advantage of. And they learned to read this year. They're reading chapter books this year. It is amazing to watch how much they're growing. We know that early foundation in literacy sets them up for success for the future. If they miss this opportunity in second grade to get the firsthand or the hands-on experience, the time with the teacher, we won't get it back. There's no room to make it up in the future. The other thing that was just very challenging to hear is what the long-term impact of this would be. The second grade class becomes 1. So they stay 1 when they get to third grade. So our teachers will be playing, chairs on the Titanic. Every year, which teacher's going to teach? That class stays together. What happens if 5 kids move into the district? Now we have a different problem. So I ask that we look in other places. I understand. I've worked in higher education for 20 years. I know what it takes to run colleges. I don't know what it takes to run regional school districts, but I do understand that the direct impact to our students at this stage is so critical to their long-term success, that I appreciate that there were direct line items. We know what they will cut. We understand what that impact would be. I appreciate your comments and I would just like to echo them. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Jared Cohen. I live on Gates Pond Road. I have a 5-year-old in kindergarten. Can't really talk about her much because I'll probably lose it. But I feel like last year there was a lot of kind of animosity that someone was discovered. And I don't know if it was intentional, but communication didn't really go well between the school board and FinCom and the rest of the government. And I understand, like, I'm not putting that on anyone. I think it seems like maybe the school committee dropped the ball on some of the communication stuff, and maybe it's because it seems like there's a lot going on with the financial directorship of the school system, and a lot of us don't have a lot of details on what happened. We know something happened. We know we have an entirely new financial committee that started this year, right? Al, the superintendent, and the financial director, whose name I don't remember, and all of them. But it seems like after all the balls that were dropped last year on communicating this, it seems like the committee and the financial and the whole central office seem to us to have done a really, worked really hard to try and communicate and do everything right this way and provide all the details they can. And last night, I know, some of you attended remotely. There was a lot of very distressed parents seeing what the suggested additional cuts would mean, because it seems like there's really nothing else that can go in. I'm not going to go into how hurtful it is. I think you guys probably all understand and get the idea. We don't need more. So we're just kind of lamenting that all night. But I don't know, it really just seems to me and to a lot of other parents that I've spoken about that folks have tried really hard on the school committee and the central office that are all new employees to really do the right thing here and get the budget as they can and try and find everything they can that they can cut without starting to hurt teachers and hurting students. So just wanted to share that was kind of what we got out of last night. And I was at remotely attended the March 11th meetings. Well, I watched a bunch of them. I watched some of them here remotely. First time being in this room, but yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Hey, everyone. Hi, I'm Julie Lee. I'm
Hi,
from
Julie.
Berlin. Hi, folks. Okay. I'm gonna keep this, my phone in front of me while I talk. I will second what else has been said here with the cuts. I think that the new leadership at Tohoto and the school committee right now and the administrators worked really hard to cut that original that you see, the March 11th. And some of those are even hard hits at Tohoto, losing the athletic director, losing a science teacher, when we're still requiring the MCAS bio as a graduation requirement is a hit. That's being cut currently from Tohoto right now. Then when they went back to the drawing board after the recommendation was to cut further, at Tohoto, taking away a guidance admin is immensely impactful for Tohoto. As we know, kids are struggling with their mental health. Affecting the guidance department is not advisable, but that was one of the only things that they could cut. In addition to that, as we know, a lot of our students do go on to colleges, and that role there helps with the kids with their transcripts. That admin position is important for the Tohoto role. Also, the additional cut, which the school committee did not approve was to eliminate a music teacher at Tohoto. And if we eliminate the music teacher at Tohoto, the drama department is done. Because the music teacher currently right now runs a drama department. So if the music teacher was eliminated there, there would be no production that's happening in 2 weeks, so there would be no drama. So we'd have no music and we'd have no drama at the high school, which significantly also affects the culture at the high school. So I agree with Kristen. I think that the administration did go to the school committee with additional cuts by the recommendation of the town to see what it would do, what the impact would be, but the impact would be absolutely crippling to Tohoto. We've already heard about what it would do to Berlin Memorial School, cutting that second grade teacher, also cutting band at the elementary school, and cutting those tutors. It would just be a huge impact to the kids and the families, and it just disrupts the community on the whole. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie.
Anybody else? All right, I'll assume next to no. Okay, we can move on. Do we need to do a reserve fund transfer? or
We do. We
let's
have,
do that
Sure.
early on here.
all right, let me pull that up. Just need to grab that one. I didn't have that handy. Okay. So the town accountant had forwarded a reserve fund transfer to everyone. This would be for treasurer collector expenses in the amount of $3,117. This would be the last payment to the consultant for the cash recon for FY24, which is finished, as you can tell, since we were able to submit everything to the state.
Yeah, that was good news.
Very good news.
So you said it was 3,117.
Correct.
Can you bring that up?
I
and
sure
show that?
can. So the present amount in the treasurer collector expense appropriation is $17,511.78. Obviously, this was an unanticipated expense.
And the request is from the reserve fund.
Request is from the reserve fund. That's correct. Since we can't start doing line item transfers till May.
Yeah.
And for the minutes, it's being transferred to where? Sorry.
Treasurer collector expenses from the reserve fund. If approved.
We won't pay them.
We don't judge.
I'll make the motion to approve the reserve fund transfer of $3,117 to the treasurer collector expenses.
I'll second
All right, any other discussion on this? All right, roll call, Scott, aye.
it. Mary, I.
Heidi, I.
Cliff, I.
All right, passes 4-0. Do we have any printouts that we have to sign?
The town accountant is out at the moment, so I
Okay, we're
did not get the final one. I can bring it to the
next.
next meeting.
Okay,
I did review and sign it, but then I don't have the final one, sorry.
all right, why don't we get to the budget
Okay.
and we can bring up.
Yeah, we want to go to expenditures. Where would you like to go?
I do want to go just to revisit something that's, I think it was a little bit confusing, but I know the discussion on the stipends to the boards.
Okay.
I'm not worried about the select board. They recommended to
You want me to share? Yes, I was going to share as soon as he got into a specific line item. Thank you.
obviously they recommended to, cut their stipend to zero. Now they had I guess more of an advisory recommendation to cut the stipends of the other elected positions, the assessors, board of assessors, board of health, and of course the moderator. And of course, the main, I mean, the dollar amounts is small, but the big piece of this was all those positions qualified if they wanted to take health insurance.
Correct.
And part of that, we were, with assumptions of reducing our exposure there, also cut the health insurance line. But I just want to see about the communications to those boards, because they are elected positions, and it's unlike, say, if it was coming before us with the public safety, police, fire, highway, those are things that select board has direct control on. They don't have that with those other elected boards. So it's really an advisory thing. It wasn't as like them cutting their own stipend, that's them making that decision. It's kind of easy to do that. As I thought about afterwards, we haven't heard from the Board of Assessors, we haven't heard from the Board of Health, we haven't heard from the moderator on their opinion on it, because they said their vote was just an advisory one. And I wasn't thinking about that last Wednesday, that it was just advisory and not as authoritative as them cutting their own stipend. So I was like, wanting to see about what communication's been done with the Board of Assessors, the moderator, and the Board of Health, and about having, if they want to speak to any of that.
I agree, Scott.
So I did, because I had the same feeling that you did, and I kind of view myself as like the traffic cop and getting all that information out. I did send I'm gonna actually pull it up. I did send an email out on last Thursday to department heads and the chairs of boards and committees that outline, oh, now it's highlighting everything that says budget or cut. Okay. There you go. I did, just so you can read it well, just in case you didn't pick up on that. I did outline all of the select board voted on reductions, and anything that had been voted on so far by the FinCom. I labeled them SB and or FC for select board and FinCom. I also outlined that those were in addition to the cuts that I had recommended, which I had already shared with anybody who would be impacted. I have not received any specific feedback on those cuts from anyone. I would be happy to send a follow-up email and say, if you do have concerns and want to speak to the FinCom, please let me know. But, I definitely outlined it for them.
Yeah, and I would want to make sure that they just didn't overlook it. I mean,
Sure.
it's not exactly something that's ever been touched in the past.
Right.
I mean, the stipend has always been very low, with the fact that it also, can have a bigger, like I say, it's not really so much the dollar amount as the fact that we are zeroing out those positions for eligibility for health insurance.
Correct. And so actually I put that one first because I figured people might not want to read this full long-winded email, which I understand. So my first bullet was eliminate stipends for all elected officials. This would also mean elected officials would no longer be eligible for health insurance. And obviously it's the FinCom's budget, it's your vote as it
Yeah.
goes to town meeting, and then town meeting would have to vote on it. And then there would be outreach from the treasurer collector's office as to end dates, COBRA, all of those things. So if it were to be voted at town meeting, that would not be the last that anyone would hear about this. That would be like the next step in the process. There would be more coming on an administrative level from there.
Yeah, I just wanted anything just to clarify that.
Sure.
It was truly, those three ones were more advisory for the select board, as opposed, like I said, I was taking it more as authoritative cuts, like if they were taking from any of those other positions where they have
Right.
the
so-
authority on, but with those other boards, they just advisory only.
Right, because they recommend to the FinCom, ultimately it is your budget that goes to town meeting.
Right.
Just like I recommend, you get to overrule.
Okay, well, if we aren't hearing anything from them, I mean, again, maybe we can send out a special email just to those boards and the moderator, just to make sure that they didn't miss that.
I sure can do that.
Yeah, give them one more week to speak up, so to say.
All right, I will do that. And I'll BCC you guys on it, so you know when it goes out.
All right, thanks.
You got it. All right, back to the budget.
Yes.
Okay. Now I'm going to share my screen. If I can find where Zoom disappeared to. Oh, sorry, hold on a second. It did this to me the other night. I don't know why this is not. No, that's not it. No. I see I hit it and then it disappeared. It did this. Oh, there we go. Did this to me the other night. No.
So Scott, we did vote on that, but you're saying it's.
We did vote on it, but I just
it-
wanted to point out, because I wasn't even thinking about that until after, a few days later, I realized they're an elected board and that I kind of took the cut of the select board of all four of them equivalent to the authority they have on their own stipend.
Right.
And they don't have that authority on those
Yes.
other three boards. So I afterwards realized that it was probably a mistake to have jumped into that one right away. I mean, select board is fine because they voted off their, I mean, they voted to cut themselves, so I have no problem with that. It's just the fact that the other boards need to be able to have any,
Sure.
opinion on that.
I
Yeah.
was just looking at the expenses page in the budget and said, oh yeah, I guess we did vote last week on that, but I would like to visit it clearly.
Yeah.
For the reasons.
I mean, we have the authority to lower any dollar amount there regardless of they're elected or not. But I just want to make sure that we realize that it was just an advisory thing for the select board.
Sorry, I had to leave and I'll come back in. Technical difficulties for a moment.
Sure.
All right. Oh, no, you disappeared. Of course you did.
I know.
You can read all the signatures, right? Or everything.
Well, if I can't read their signatures, I'll blame their elementary school teacher.
Most of it is correct. It's pretty good.
There we go.
30 years old.
All right.
Exactly.
Thank you for your
I think the
patience.
superintendent has the worst handwriting.
He does.
Tony did, okay. That's reminding me. I tell her to remind me. Tony did.
All right, where would you like to
Where
go?
we need to, I think we covered everything in the 100.
You
right?
sure did.
Well, actually, what are the big items that we still have left? Let's go to all.
You want to start from the bottom? Those are where the large items are.
Yeah, well, let's look at the numbers. Have you placed in the, we'll assume the small adjustments
Yep.
on the school budget. So
I have.
have you so you reduced the 5,000 on Tohoto, 5,000 on BMS?
I did. So, yep, I just took the number that was in there. I took 5,000 off here, and I reduced the capital down to 10 for Tohoto, in case it was a little bit more than 9, and the 237,000. So if that is something that you should take a vote on, I would just ask that either we would have to have another meeting on the final number, or that I be allowed to adjust it within a small margin based on what the final assessment were to be to come back from the schools tomorrow, because I am probably off a few dollars.
And at the same time, it's offset by the free cash, right?
Yes, it
So
is.
it's not
So I went into revenue and I put 247,000 in for free cash for BMS and Tohoto.
okay.
Did that change that final
It did.
figure?
Yep. So, and, let me hide these because you don't need to make it a little easier so I can make it bigger. So that did change your bottom line here. And what it would mean if you were to fully fund the budget as it sits right now, keep in mind that, did I put the library? I did not put the library in there. So that would be an additional about $20,000, I think is what we came to.
Yes.
But that would leave you with the 880,000 in the excess levy.
Could you repeat that number again? I'm sorry.
880,302.
Okay.
And I'm Scott, I don't know if you want to explain since it got brought up what that means in terms of dollars or percentages or
Yeah, that's what I want to see the percentages. If you can scroll down, do you still have the scratch,
I
or
do.
scratch area? Yeah,
We'll
you'll
save
never
that
read, but-
forever.
Oh, please do.
Instead of having to redo it.
Yeah.
I'll only protest a little bit about numbers on the fly, but that's okay.
It's not broken.
I broke it last week, but I fixed it.
But you
Don't make
fixed
me
it,
break it
okay.
tonight.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, so right now, what we sat at last week was a larger than normal target increase to the levy. Instead of normally being 2.5%, or our target is 2.5%. 2 years ago was ended up being, we went 4%. Last year, I was trying to do the actual calculations. It was under 4.5%, at least what we were targeting at that time. The numbers end up coming out at the end a little different because new growth wasn't as strong as projected and stuff like that. But what we were targeting was a bigger increase last year than the year before. And right now, the numbers we were using for last week's was a 3.5%. And if it was funded as is, so can you put in, first of all, what the 3.5% number is and what the deficit is there? This does not have the library, correct?
Let me just double check. I don't believe so, although I do have it pointed to the select board budget right now, just because that's the budget that I have complete. But I don't believe that that increase is in there. Let me see. It is not in there, right? Because it's still the 128 plus 45,
Yeah.
which is 174, not 195.
Right.
Yep, so nope, it is not in there.
Okay, that's fine. It's an easy round number of 20. We just have to remember how it affects things. So if you did the number using the 3.5%, what is the deficit we had last time? The deficit was just under 207,000.
Yeah, so sorry, this got shrunk a little bit. Let me make that a little bit better. So this shifted slightly because of playing around with capital. But and also it was at 207, but there was a reason it shifted to 224, but you're right about in that ballpark.
It's actually gone up to 224.
It has.
I
Yeah.
was hoping it'd be going down by 10,000.
Let me think about that for a minute. Is it because I did not take it out down here? I think perhaps that change number did not get reflected down here. Hold on, let's try this again. So that was 1 CT. I see what's going on here. Okay, hold on. That number get reflected. No, that number should be.
Was there any other changes in the revenue numbers that you had done besides obviously offsetting the capital? That should not be impacting it.
No, it shouldn't. So the operating plus the debt, let me just put those changes back in there. Asset increase was the same. Town increase at 138. We were closer to 111 with the town increase. What changed there? I'll have to look into that. I am not 100% sure. I just was checking to see if the library somehow did end up in there, but it doesn't look like it did, because that would be almost the amount of that increase. It did.
Oh, the library.
The library is in there. Sorry.
Okay.
That's what it was.
But is the library in, okay, so is the library in there with the 26,000, just the wages and not the reduction?
Not the
expenses?
reduction. That is correct.
Okay,
So do you want me to put the new numbers in for the library?
let's put the new numbers in since one of them is in there.
Right, you might as well. Might as well.
Can
do the
you-
whole thing.
Yes.
I have to pull up
Yeah.
that spreadsheet again. Does somebody have those new numbers written down by chance?
I was writing approximations.
That's all right. I can do
I
it.
thought it was it 26,612?
I'm just gonna
was
have
the
to stop
salary?
sharing for a second
Uh,
because I have to go into
Oh.
an email.
yes,
It was 612?
yes.
Got one on paper
Here,
here.
I'm gonna go in and make sure that I like what I just said. Say it like you mean it, Clifton.
The good thing is we're just worrying about
I'm
the,
pulling, Kristen, I'm pulling it
a
up.
couple
Oh, thank you.
$100.
I
of
just found it.
I'm sorry, Scott.
Oh, it's right here. Goofy. Okay, here we go.
The expense piece is the one that I can't speak to.
Yes, I didn't do the calculation there. We just knew that they reduced it approximately a
So
little over
150.
6,000.
So 154, 814 on salary. And how much on expense? $42.10. Is that right? Oh, you know what else wasn't in there? The cultural council that the select board did vote to add back in for $1,500 on Monday night. So we're closer now. We're at 219.
Oh,
but
that was
I
actually
figured it would go
removed.
down a little bit. The cultural council, they had not taken a vote on yet,
Okay, but you had, but it
and
was
I had to add
removed.
it back in
But it
Monday night.
was, they hadn't taken a vote, but you had removed it from last week. Okay.
Correct. So that got added back in as well.
We had a nice citizen commentary on that.
We did.
proposed cut. Yeah,
We did.
But it's not cut.
a written commentary about it.
Okay, so the new number comes down to 209. I can't.
Looks
read
like
that.
219, 147.
Okay, and that would be consistent because before it was just under 207,000. We've had $10,000 in cuts because of the OPEB at BMS.
Yep.
And our share, we're doing it
Increase of 20.
5,000 approximately.
Yep, and an increase of 1,500.
Yes. So it's, oh yeah, actually increase of 1,500. Yes, that accounts for all of it. Okay. So assuming, again, the library is inserted into there
It is now.
and with
Correctly.
the $10,000 that we know, well, we're assuming, well, actually, they were voted on. So
Tell me about
I think we
sharing.
can assume that, and more than just assume. So that would give us a deficit of 200 and just over 219,000.
Correct.
So if you funded that full 219,000, I believe the number you end up having is the levy increase would actually be just under 5%. Can you put in the 5% number?
We're gonna do 5%. Pretty close. Within
Let's see.
$7,600.
Okay, so it's it's
Sorry.
positive, so it's just a smidge under 5%. So,
Yep.
when we made our calculations, like I said, 2 years ago, we went, and again, the goal is keeping at the 2.5% increase in the levy. We actually went to 4% 2 years ago. Last year, we were, again, what the percentage actually ended up being at the end are depending on how accurate we are with new growth and other numbers that we are assuming that what the state brings in and stuff like that. Last year it was around like 4.3 to 4.4% was the target when we made our agreement just before a special town meeting in June. So this would be an increase at least going in, that would be actually higher
But
than,
where we landed last year, Scott, I'm looking at Kristen's summary, we landed at 7.49% tax increase.
well, clarify that, that's,
Yeah.
there's, you're talking, combining two different things here. One is,
Okay.
what I'm talking about is the increase in the previous year's levy. One of those increases in the levy, besides the 2.5% or whatever percentage, you also have the new growth number. So her number also includes new growth.
Correct.
So, and then of course, there was a few things that also was bad last year was our target, if you go back and look at, which we were just talking about just before the meeting, our target for new growth last year was the assumption of 300,000, which was a reduction of the 350,000 the year before. New growth came in at around, what, 220,000. So therefore, that, almost, well, over 75,000 was made up for in levy. And that alone, you can see here that, the numbers are somewhat similar last year, but you can see that every 0.5% or 0.5 points on the percentage is like right now, it's just over 75,000. So that added another 0.5 right there. So when we were looking at 4.4, it was really ended up being 4.9. Not to mention, however, things shifted around as there was another abatement
Residential,
with
commercial
Sears
shifts.
and
Yes.
and all that
Lot
type
mall.
of
And we're
stuff.
gonna see that again.
But that
It's
doesn't
not
change the
better.
that doesn't change the percentages levy. It's just the shift on it. So
Yeah,
what we were calculating for a increase last year, ended up being higher. This, if you fund it as it is, you'd be, calculating even higher than what we were targeting last year, even though it probably would be coming in at a number similar to what it was actual last year. This year, we have reduced the new growth number down to 200,000. Hopefully, we're not going to find out that a year from now, we're sitting here and finding out new growth was only 100,000. But
It's an estimate, so.
it is an
yeah,
estimate,
We do our best.
right?
Also, motor vehicle excise tax came in significantly lower last year than anticipated by almost $95,000 because people are holding on to their vehicles. It logically makes sense, but unfortunately, we do our budgets so far in advance
right.
that in our estimation, it's very difficult to calculate that out. So that played into it as well.
Right. That alone right there would be another 0.5.
Right.
Points. And were there other things that were positive? Like with hotel revenue and that type of stuff, is there anything that we
Actually have
came in
local receipts
under?
right here. Yep,
Oh,
so
the summary sheet, right?
this is all in the summary sheet. Local receipts is the last, this is the one that's in the drive. I made my own separate one, so I didn't break it, but that is the one that's in the summary sheet. So as you can see, I'm sorry, we did actually estimate 600. We estimated 695,000 for FY 25, and we did come in at 607 for FY 24. So because we had been coming in consistently higher, we did put forward the 695. So there will likely be a reduction in excise tax as well. I did reflect that reduction in FY 26 to make sure that we weren't going to have an issue there. We did pick up money in some areas, a little bit in meals tax. We picked up 60,000 in hotels, in hotel tax, and we picked up a little bit in building permits and other licenses and permits, as you can see from here. So fines and forfeits. And actually a big area that we picked up was interest on investments because we took advantage of the high interest rates to do some reinvesting of our long-term stabilization and other funds. But when it all shook out from 25 to 26, we're only estimating that we'll pick up about $12,000, $12,500 in local receipts. It's not a big increase because everything has shifted so radically. I'll go back to your thing now.
Yeah. So that's kind of where we stand. That's where our high end is. And we were, talking at 3.5% before, at last week's meeting. So again, 3.5% leaves us, the deficit was approximately 220,000. It was just under 220,000.
So I have plugged those into the summary sheet and I've run them through our lovely estimate. I wish June were here to do that, if you want me to share that information.
The summary sheet, which,
Oh, the summary sheet here where we're doing the estimated increased amount of dollars on tax bills.
oh, okay.
Okay, so I actually had a lovely conversation with, actually several lovely conversations with a resident. Thank you, if you're listening, Jason. And we actually talked about what is the best way to try to estimate this, given that we only have FY25 data, right? We don't know what the split and the shift is going to be for next year. We don't know about abatements. There are a lot of unknowns. We don't know what the values, this average single family home value, the tax rate, et cetera, is going to be. So we created basically this really cool calculator, and it was really interesting because this resident was able to back into almost the exact same number that my little property tax calculator was able to do. So
No surprise.
I feel a little bit more comfortable, a little bit, with those numbers, but again, with all the caveats that if local receipts come in lower, if new growth comes in lower, shift, split, FY25 numbers, all of that. But I did put this together because this is what everybody wants to know. And this was, this was shared at, or this similar information was shared at the school committee meeting last night. Actually, April, the town administrator in Boylston, and I provided the same calculator to the school committee. So if we look at the average single family home value, it's just under $660,000 for this year. The average single family tax bill at that rate is $9,363. A 3.5 increase plus new growth, I'm showing it with and without, would be $449 or $330 without the estimated $200,000 in new growth. So this is what it would be at the FinCom recommended level that was provided to the school committee. And to fund the budget as currently presented with the school committee votes that were taken last night would be $588 approximately, or $469 increase without the estimated new growth. So I agree with the school committee's analysis. The chair said it was about $11 a month difference. That's why I broke it down between the months, because I wanted to see, if I arrived at the same conclusion, and I did. The difference is basically either $27.50 increase per month or $38. Now, again, this could be off by $100 to $200 one way or the other. I don't think it's going to go down, but this is the closest that we can estimate. And the fact that I, had a friend build a very elaborate calculator and we came out to the same for last year makes me feel a little bit more comfortable using those numbers with all of the caveats that are out there that could change it.
So, I mean, it basically shows, the percentage we talked about. I mean, you said the average tax bill 9,363, $588 is what percentage of that? Can you do?
I'm going to
that?
let you do
Yeah.
that math. Percentages always make me nervous.
Seven something.
That about right? I
I don't
always
know.
feel like I do them
I
wrong.
did it like
I
at
get backwards
7
sometimes on it
something
when it's late.
Yeah, it's 6.3%.
Okay.
6.3, okay.
Yep, that's what I came up with too. Okay, good.
So you're still, no,
We still off a little bit?
no, I mean, it's
Okay.
just going, it is we're still in the ranges of, what we had before, in slightly higher, actually, percentage wise, what people saw. Again,
And how
depending
that
much
all factors
shifts
out in the wash.
Because
Yeah,
as,
could go up.
because we know that Sears has come back with another abatement in that stuff. So if they win their abatement, again, even more shifts to the residential.
Right. And the select board is also trying to not have a huge jump in 1 year when the eventual commercial devaluation goes down again. So they're trying to incrementally adjust the shift, which they did this year, instead of doing the 1.49% shift that they did for 24, they did a 1.41% shift. So they're really, and I imagine they'll do the same again, back that off even a little bit further for FY 26, which will have an impact as well. So they're trying to kind of ease it in on the residential side, so it's not one huge hit in 1 year, assuming that the mall gets another big cut in value.
So
basically.
the shift you're referring to is the different tax rates. between
Yes,
the,
the proportion of the overall tax levy that is borne by the residential versus commercial, industrial, and personal property.
Right, so the weighting, the increased weighting that's given to commercial is slowly being reduced.
Correct.
And so there will be another shift of that.
Yes. If I, and that at least that was the will of the current select board. Obviously, we have a new select board member who will be coming on.
Right. when that
So I
decision is
can't speak
officially
for
made.
that, but that was the will at least of the select board this fiscal year.
Right, because that will be made around October, November?
Yes, November typically. Once free cash is certified on a normal schedule.
Okay. So going back to, let's look at the budget.
Okay. Where do you want to go?
Well, like I said, we were at the 3.5% number. Going up to, like I said, if you increase, like I said, if you went targeted 4%, you'd reduce the deficit by just over, $75,583. Which would leave you still at around 145,000. Can you go up to like the bigger line items, go to
Yep.
public safety? And the wage items under public safety, fire, EMS. So right now, the requested on the full-time and part-time wages on fire is $634,000.
Mhm.
An increase of 20,500. The wages, now these are partially offset by the Highland Commons. The total wages there is 1 million.
Police is offset. Yep.
Yes. But the total wages is 1,318,308.
Yep. Oh, sorry.
So, I mean, if there was looking at a way to keep it at 3.5%, and if the cuts at the schools would be, not desirable for that, one of the other ways, I mean, the big ticket items to be able to look at would be to offset that with cuts across police salaries and fire and EMS salaries.
Right.
Which obviously would just reduce the overall like hours they could, because it's not necessarily something you'd be needing to have to lay off somebody because they have part-time people in these positions. It would just be shifts that would not get filled throughout the entire year.
It depends. They have a lot of currently unfilled shifts over on the police side right now. It's getting better as there's been some new hires, and we did have a long-term IOD, injured on duty issue. The problem here is it could potentially result in a layoff because the increases are contractual. So it depends on how that all shakes out with the union contract mandated increases, similar to what you face on the school side when you have union contractual increases for teachers. If you have to reduce the budget to meet those increases, then it ultimately results in some type of staffing reduction.
But basically, that's the area that,
Yes.
if there's any place to take a type of the larger chunk. I mean, if you're looking at, like, say, having a $220,000 deficit or any type of change in percentages. If you, for example, did a 4% and a $60,000 cut in either of those each of those, you would nearly also offset it to keeping the levy increase at only 3.5%.
I would say if you wanted to recommend making more cuts on the town side, there are some other areas I would look at first.
Okay, and what would those be?
Unfortunately, those would be areas that are not mandated, if you will. And we do have some positions that are in the process of being filled that I believe are essential positions. I think that we would struggle significantly without them. But I do have concerns about cutting police and fire because we are so thin on those, and those actually have a direct impact on response time. Whereas if you were looking at other budgets that would not have that level of direct impact on services, you're going back to some of the things the select board were talking about, like unfortunately transfer station, and some of the other line items there. I unfortunately would go that direction before I would cut public safety.
Yeah, and I think once you brought to light through the Neshoba dispatch stats that you shared with us, I don't think just to let you guys know what we're talking about.
I can share that.
Even though we're a small town and you would think we have very few calls, we have an exceptionally large number of calls for the size of our town because we are placed at Route 62 and 495 and 290. So it
And
really,
malls and River Bridge.
yeah, so a lot of the calls aren't necessarily to the residents of the town. A lot of it is due to our placement.
That's true. So I'll give you an example. We're part of regional dispatch. And we split it evenly between the 8 towns that are there. So split evenly, our assessment for FY26 at the time we did this analysis would have been $216,000 per community. So we had a town that wanted to join. So they said, well, what if we did it based on population? And what if we did it based on call volume? So you're starting at 216, right? So you base it on population, Berlin's assessment goes down to $85,000. You base it on call volume, Berlin's assessment goes up to $209,000. So they're really, the size of the town does not correlate directly with call volume. And we have to man that 495 corridor anytime there's an accident or anything going on there, because the likelihood of the state police being out there at the time that something happens, we have to respond. We only have at this time, we have 11, we have 10 full-time officers in the process of hiring, and 11, 3 of those are paid for through the mitigation funds that come from the mall. So that does not hit the taxpayer. And we do have 4 full-time firefighters right now, firefighter EMTs. So we are pretty lean.
Well, one thing you should be careful is that they do hit a taxpayer. They hit the commercial.
Excuse me, I
taxpayer,
apologize. They don't
yes.
hit the residential. Yes, they hit the developer of the
Right, they hit the
business owner of the
developer, right.
mall. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, correct. They are paying that,
Fair.
but plus they would also pay whatever increase in the property taxes are already.
Right, but at least 3 of those 11 positions are offset by the mitigation money.
Yeah, and kind of in a long-term fiscal kind of looking at that, we don't want to get too reliant.
Right. Well, and I don't want to do the fear mongering thing at all by any means by saying if you cut people, the ambulance is going to take longer to get to your house. But in all honesty, that is what happens when you have less staff and you have unfilled shifts. If there's not somebody physically here, especially for fire EMS, and we have to use a call person, it takes however long for that call person to get to the station, to get in the ambulance, to go to the house. Whereas if we're able to have, right now our 4 staff people are able to provide at least 1 person on 24 hours. You start to drop from that and we don't have that. So that's the concern there. So it is real. I mean, that would be my fear. And, if you did want to have that conversation, and I know that the select board did have both of the chiefs in to have that conversation about were there any way to cut their budgets. Fire EMS calls, the chief gave a statistic. They were, for some reason this time, and he actually can't figure out why, calls are up 42% this year over last year for fire and EMS calls, and that's townwide. And police calls, the chief has been getting over 1,000 calls almost a month in the last couple of months. So those numbers are high. They don't seem to be coming down. They seem to be going up.
Do they break those down? I mean, first of all, what type, or what was the range of those 42% or increase or?
That was based on this time last year. Looking at this time, looking at March, and I believe actually when he did that, it was January and February of 24 versus January and February of 25.
Okay.
Well, but 42% of 10 calls is a small number.
Oh, you're talking,
Yeah.
oh.
Because when you're looking at, yeah, what's the 42% based on? I guess that's my question.
Yeah.
Well, if you give me a minute, I can pull it up, but it'll take me a minute. So, but I know that was one thing before the select board recommended the public safety budgets. They did have the chiefs come in and discuss impacts of potential staffing, impacts of reductions to their budgets and what that would mean. We are just finally getting to the point where we don't have massive amounts of open shifts on police and fire. There have been, times when if their mutual aid call comes in, there's nobody at the station. It's happened. And so the fear is if we're over here or we're over here and another call comes in, we don't have the staffing, what do you do? So that's my concern there.
I just wondering too, is like, I mean, tracking the number for comparing last year to like for calls, because the ramp
Sure.
at 495, 290
Mhm.
was under construction the past year. And I know, especially during a lot of that stuff was, how much was that impacting cars cutting through town? That would be, I guess we have to look at that number going forward to know if it drops,
Hmm.
to make sure we don't miss a drop. If it was just a 1-year anomaly, and not take that as, and then we'll revisit this in the future.
Certainly something to look at, but I know that Chief McQuillan has looked at it from all angles and he is boggled as to why that number has increased so substantially. He really couldn't come up with an explanation.
Not
for it.
the 290 ramp construction. I mean,
I
I've seen the
don't,
backup during the construction period on that.
I'll run
so
that by him.
That is the most obvious one.
So Scott, personal observation, I used to do the commute and sometimes to Berlin, sometimes to Worcester on that stretch of 495. It was a mess before, during, and after the construction. It's just a mess. So it's no surprise to me that we have high volume, and then
That could be a
you know,
contributing.
they did the best they could with the ramp, but the ramp could use more work in both directions. They're both.
Well, they got 2 lanes now. It's before it used to be 1 lane and it would back up from all the big trucks. They had to make that tight turn. Okay, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's another discussion. But I just curious is, saying not knowing, I mean, there's a kind of a possibility of that one.
Sure.
I don't see it. On your basic question is where else to look in. Underneath the fire and EMT was building inspector.
So interesting, you should bring that up.
Yeah,
I actually had a discussion today with,
I didn't know that.
I don't know, you were like
I didn't know
ESP or something. I had a discussion with 3 area towns that have a regional building commissioner and local inspector about the possibility of joining their little regional district that they've created. I'm waiting to see what that would mean in terms of cost savings. It could generate some cost savings, but we're not talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. I have had this conversation with our current building inspector, so this is not like news he's going to find out, on Facebook later on this evening, because we don't want that. And he would like to retire at some point. We brought him back when he tried to retire 3 years ago because we couldn't find anyone. So that may be a way to go to make some savings in the future.
Well, and I know that the permits are down, and I know we had a little burst of construction activity, and I think it's quiet. You never know
Yes.
where it's gonna go, but that's part of why I was asking that.
Yep, that's why I do
Are
think
we-
when he retires, it would make sense to join a regional, and then whatever we pay in there, we would also have the benefit of all of the series of inspectors. They have a vehicle, the whole nine, and that would have a savings of health insurance because we would not be the lead town.
So my thought.
We would
was-
share it.
My thought was also full-time, part-time.
Yep.
I mean, a mid-step that's along that line.
Yep.
Um,
And that's kind of one of the things that's being discussed right now, that with the three towns, they have a full-time commissioner and a part-time local. So they're discussing what they would need to do for staffing if they bring on us and potentially one other community. It's like hot off the press, Mary. That was at 2:00 this
and-
afternoon.
and I
That's
don't know
pretty
what our-
good.
I don't know what our zoning volume is like either, this, because I know that that's another task.
They would
that-
handle zoning, they would have office hours here, do inspections, handle online permitting, all of the same
Mhm.
functions that are currently done.
So you basically have a part-time contractor then.
Essentially, yep,
Yeah.
a regional IMA, basically intermunicipal agreement, and we would pay the lead community for that service. Similar to what we were gonna do with animal control that unfortunately didn't pan out, but
It went to the dogs, did it?
it went to the dogs, Mary.
Sorry.
You know I love dog jokes. I can't help it.
Okay, so what do we want to take as a approach? You want us to go to each of the individual line items and or groups of items to go to look at voting on those, or to start with just the overall big numbers and then going back to the line items? So looking at what the total levy increase would be. So we're at 3.5%. We know that we're not going to be going over 5%, be just under 5%. So how would what do you want to take approach on? Look at the big number first?
I'm not sure I'm following you, Scott.
Well, do you want to vote on the,
Talking about the
It-
school budget?
well, you can go towards the school budget. I mean, right now, we have a number based on using a 3.5% levy increase. All right, do we go
Sorry,
into?
what that number is being what, just to be clear?
That leaves us with the library inserted, it leaves us a deficit of $220,000.
Okay,
Just under-
so, and that's the deficit between our revenue and our expense. That's,
Correct.
Right.
okay.
So you have a couple options there. Your options would be to increase the percentage that you're going after
Mhm.
from the tax levy, to cut the town budget, or to not recommend the school budget. Those are really your three options.
Well, I think I made it clear last time, I really don't want to go beyond that 3.5, knowing that it will only go up when all of the dust settles. As everything else gets calculated out and the situation with Solomon Farm Mall, so. I want to stick to that 3.5. But if you want to talk big numbers, there it is, that's where I want to land. I mean, you look at the cumulative effect. The final tax increase. Here it is, fiscal 23, it was 1.95. And then the next 2 years, they jumps 6.88 and 7.94. I want to do my best not to hit people with those kinds of jumps. I mean, for some people, $11 a month is really affordable and others aren't. I got to remind people, we have an increasing population that uses the Berlin food pantry, so don't think that $500 increase on a tax bill is something that people can afford in this town.
Yeah,
Some can and some can't.
yeah,
So I really, I'd be most happy if we just did the 2.5, but we can't do that for lots of reasons. So I really would like us to focus on that 3.5 and not at this stage in the game, not make that higher.
give you some of my opinion before we add, Cliff and Heidi, you'll be next, so. I think at this point, I'd be, against the library supplemental. And I'm amenable to going to 4%, which increases the total revenue of just over 75,000. And that puts you at basically just under $125,000 that would need to be cut elsewhere too. So that's where I'm looking at. I will start. Cliff or Heidi, who do you want? Would you give me your thoughts?
I could go for what you're proposing, Scott. I could not go any higher than that. Just these astronomical increases, just they have to stop. And I know everything gets more and more expensive as far as running a town, running a school, running the police department, the fire department. But we also have to keep it in mind that running a household also has other increases besides what the town is. And one of the things, you know, we see here that we're getting hit hard with is the cost of health insurance. Households are getting hit with that too. I mean, there are some households that right off the top of their income, $10,000 out of their paychecks or more is going directly to keep their family with health insurance. We all know the cost of energy increases, whether you're heating your home with electric, oil, gas, whatever it is. I mean, these things keep going up and up. So it is when you take one section of it and you kind of narrow it down and say, oh, it's only, you know, an $11 or $12 per month increase to the average household. That's $11 or $12 increase to all other kinds of things within that household that are also increasing. And yeah, looking, you know, at those previous two huge increases, just.
Well, and I know
Okay.
that's been tough on people for sure. The one thing I just want to clarify though too is we have been advised by DESI that whatever number you decide on, there will not be a negotiation prior to town meeting. That cannot happen again.
Right.
So we need to be on the same page with either what we're gonna do, the school's gonna do. Hopefully we're on the same page, but if there are two different budgets, there is not, once the warrant is printed, there is no longer any room for debate on that because those numbers have been voted on. They have taken place. They are final.
Well, I mean, we've had the negotiations and I mean, we're obviously a lot closer together.
We
You know,
are
last year at this time, we were talking, what was it?
900,000 almost.
Yeah, we were $750 to $800,000, I forget exact number, difference.
was big.
With the schools, so.
I felt the last 2 years, the difference was so vast, we could not bridge that gap. I feel like this gap is bridgeable and I would highly recommend that we find a way to come to an agreement prior to town meeting.
Cliff?
Well, last week I supported a 4% increase. That was the solitary no vote on the 3.5. I will stick with that recommendation, but unlike Scott, I would like to support the supplemental budget for the library. So that affects the calculation, but
It does.
May I say me too on that?
Which part?
Yes to the library.
Oh,
supplement.
okay.
Do you have any particular area you look to take the 20,000 from for the library to keep it in there? Putting you in the spot, I know, but we'll start with you, Mary.
Well, number one would be the school budget. And yeah, I guess that's, yeah. And
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh, she said if she would cut the
PRSD, yeah.
yes, to make the 20,000 for the library would be 20,000 less of what would be going towards the school. Cliff?
that
any
was
thoughts?
that's what I was saying.
Okay.
And awkwardly.
Okay. All right, so if we went to 4%, again, we haven't any vote on that. It
Okay.
increases it revenue by 75,000 if the 20,000 went to the library. And that would only leave that would leave 55,000 to offsetting the request against the schools, which I think brings them down still to a deficit of 145,000. I do have a further question on, no. Look at right school budget here. I know there was the additional, calculations of the, let's see, find the right one. There was additional calculations, additional cuts that target, Berlin Memorial, not necessarily about interest in Boylston Elementary, but obviously, Tohoto. Is, where do we understand anything with, Boylston? Are they fine without those, because obviously there's, additional Tohoto cuts of 171,745. Just under 2/3 of that is, for Boylston. I mean, if those, numbers aren't the, cuts, is Boylston, where do they stand? Do they need an override, or do we know?
My understanding is Boylston, looking at my notes from last night, requested that the district reduce the total assessment by $685,317. Now, again, with the capital shift, that helped to offset some of that, taking away, because they do their budgeting a little bit differently than ours.
The other capital was part of that number.
Correct. So that helped to offset some of
Yep.
that deficit. My understanding is that they don't believe they are going to need an override.
So. I keep going back to the bases. I'm looking at the cuts, the slides, 7 on Boylston and 5 on Berlin. And I'm seeing some of these line items, there's the word new in parentheses. And my understanding, going back to the February 11 budget, was that it was level services.
Those are all new cuts, new proposed cuts.
These are not, okay,
Yes.
okay. So they would all be new cuts, wouldn't they?
That's my understanding.
Yeah, all right.
Just to
Got it.
differentiate
Okay.
between the March 11th and the total, and
Okay.
then the new and the total.
Okay.
All right, well, let's start with the simple thing. Let's go to the library. Line item. And. Yeah, so would somebody want to make a motion for
Trying to get there.
the,
There we go.
I guess,
Before we make a
Sure.
motion, is the amount for the library is like the number of hours negotiable? Like to give them something for additional hours?
well, yes, I think
Sure.
that from speaking with her is like, I mean, if they don't get it, I think they're looking at reducing the overall
15 or 20
hours. But I think, yeah, they want 66 to because they are open 33 hours today. They increase 33 hours for each floor, that's 66 hours, and they only have 46 hours of coverage today. So you'd be looking at, if you went by that, if they didn't get any hour increase, you'd be looking at reducing from 33 to 23. Right? I guess that would be the math on that. So if there's something in between there, that if they funded half of that amount, that would, instead of being the 10-hour cut in hours, I guess it would be 5 hours in cuts. So obviously there could be middle ground. It's not, doesn't have to be a all or nothing scenario.
So the budget request that came into us earlier in the year, at the end of last year, the library's got 2 supplements. One is the youth librarian at 15,612.
Mhm.
The other is an additional library assistant and that's $11,000 request on supplemental, and that's to get to the full staffing
Correct.
level, if I understand it. So I don't know if you only
Yes.
went with the 11,000 supplement, if that would mean we drop from 33 hours of staff coverage.
So right here, if you can see it, The increase in hours for the youth services librarian would bring that position from 18 to 30 hours and bring desk staff up. Oh, I did it the wrong way. Sorry. I started with so the new position would bring the desk staff up to 46 out of 66 hours. If you add the additional hours for the youth services librarian, your desk hours would go up another 10 hours to 56 hours per week. I do want to point out too, the vote from the board Monday night on that, I'm in a little bit of an odd situation because there are only 2 board members at this time. There was 1 vote in favor and 1 abstention.
Is,
So it passes.
well, does it pass?
That is something I have not had time to look into, to be perfectly honest with you. That's up for debate at the
I
moment.
doubt that
Okay.
could pass because I don't know of anything that will allow a less, or no, you'd have to at least have over 50% of the necessary quorum. If there's only a quorum of 2, you're not gonna get over 50% with 1.
That was what I thought. I literally have been running around and haven't had a chance to look it up. I know Dee was doing a little research on it for me, but I just want you to know it was not a unanimous vote. There was an abstention.
So
That-
FinCom
Well,
and
that's-
Select Board are kind of the same thing. We're all in dialogue about this, right?
Yeah, and that was the same on the cultural council as well.
Well, I like Heidi's suggestion to try to do something here, and because there's 2 supplemental requests, it makes it kind of point you at doing one or the other.
Right. I mean, I guess it could be any combination of however they want, right, to do it, right? I mean,
Once
one
they
is
get that-
Once they
increasing,
get the numbers.
one is
Once they get
increasing
the dollar amount,
15.
They do
or-
what they do.
Yes, they just get a dollar amount and they will, no, we're not going to micromanage their
Yes.
details. They're just giving them the dollar amount.
Except I would state that, just remember, depending on how they do it, I think you might need a little bit of guidance because 1 brings a position to benefited.
Well, that is also a concern
That's a
considering part of the
consideration.
cost.
So which one does that point us at, Kristen?
Is
Which
that the
one?
15?
There's one at 18 hours, they would increase to 15, which would put them at, well, they go over the 20, so they'd be at 33, so they become benefited.
Yeah.
So the library assistant would be a 10-hour-a-week new position. The youth services would be going from 18 to 30.
Yeah.
That is an existing position increasing and becoming a benefited position. And the benefits budget has been scaled back substantially.
Yep.
It makes me very nervous as it is right now, so I will share that with you.
And the other position again, remind me?
Is
It's a new
the
position, but
library
just-
assistant for the 10 hours a week at a cost of $11,000.
Yep.
Okay.
Right.
So that's clearly a part-time 10.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I mean, it's benefit eligible would be whether or not, I mean, unfortunately, we don't have.
We
the-
can't
we
ask
don't
that
know,
question.
But it's just, it'll become benefit eligible, so we were
Correct.
exposed to that extra cost. And of course, we know if we continue, on with the stipend decrease, we also eliminate a total of 10 benefit eligible people. But that's part of what we kind of, at least in my opinion, was to use to decrease the chapter 32B because we've,
Right.
but we already made that vote with a significant cut of $100,000 because we reduced that benefit exposure. So, but this is adding 1 more person with a benefit exposure if we went with the full amount. Again, we could just give them a amount in between and then they can figure out how they want to do it.
Well, if she could do the 6,000 to 7,000 in expense cut, if you take that new position at 11,000, that's a pretty small change in the overall budget. Do
They
I have
may
it
not
right or
be
no?
able to reduce expenses by that full amount.
Okay. Okay.
Unless they get the full 26, so it may not be
Ah,
offset
yeah,
by
yeah.
quite as much because
right.
of that minimum. Right now I'm speaking school, I call it minimum local contribution, that's not the right
Okay.
term, but do you know what I mean? The minimum amount that they're
Yeah.
have to hit
Mhm.
for the state. And I will point out one of the things that was discussed Monday night was this is, even though it's a quote unquote new position, it's trying to maintain existing levels of services at the library, which was the
Understood.
only reason that the select board, 1 to abstain, recommended the funding,
Yep.
if you will. They did not make any other supplemental funding requests, recommended any other supplemental funding requests.
Is there a reason for the abstention? I mean, are they looking for more information? Because other than
Nope.
looking for more information, I would, no.
I mean, I don't want to speak for anybody,
being
but my
abstaining a vote
understanding
like
is
that.
concerns about the overall cost of the budget and a general focus on cutting, not adding.
Okay, so do we, somebody want to make a motion on the library, light item? Can we go to the budget?
Sure.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
When we do, I haven't done the minutes on this kind of thing before. What will I be writing down?
Oh,
The line item number, I'll
yeah,
give it to
we
you.
always do the motion based on where the pound is, so under 600, no, actually, sorry, yeah,
Yep, line 84
Culture and
Four
recreation.
and line 85.
yeah, 85.
You'll have to yell out the numbers. because I-
We will, it'll be
we-
like bingo, don't worry.
Okay, great.
And right now, the numbers that are showing in there are with the full supplemental, correct?
That is correct. And the full reduction to expenses to offset. So we would have to rework those numbers if you would like to fund it partially. And I don't have that information
What
for
are you
you.
thinking?
I would like to see it funded partially, if
Yeah.
it can't be funded completely.
Mhm.
And I don't know what that number is.
Would you like me to ask the library to come? I mean, if you give me a dollar amount, I can ask what the final number would be, and then you could take a vote on it.
Well, if
what
we used
inevitably
like
would
that
be next meeting.
$11,000 figure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And ask what the final number would be if there was an $11,000 increase to the personnel line item.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes,
and bring that back to us.
I can, if that's, I don't know if that's motion, but
Okay, so so we're not gonna take a vote on this particular line item.
oh, are you directing me to go back and request more information?
When do we have to have a warrant out? Or when does it have to be mailed out here? I mean,
Yesterday?
today's,
Great
Yes.
question. So I was hoping for April 2nd, but that is a Wednesday, and I believe we are going to need to meet one more time, and I don't know if that day works with everyone's schedule, but I did say April 3rd, which for the board is pushing it a little, because they want to get this information in the hands of the voters as quickly as possible, so people have time, and it does have to be mailed out. So I would say the deadline is April 3rd. So your last date to meet would be April 2nd.
so we have one more meeting.
Correct.
so. This is the maximum. If there's savings to be found somewhere in expenses for the library, fine. But if this committee's in agreement to just fund that 11,000 supplement, then that can be a vote and it's clean.
And whatever the reduction in expenses, so be it. That would be the maximum.
Uh-huh.
Somebody can make a motion. I'm still on a 0
You're still on a 0.
Yeah.
All right.
or no change.
I move that we recommend the $11,000 supplemental request on personnel for the library.
Seconded.
Right, any other discussion? Okay, roll call, Scott, no?
Mary, I.
Heidi, I.
Cliff, I.
Right, passes 3-1.
But then you can just adjust those numbers and then we can vote on the line item.
Yes. I will not be adjusting them right now, but I will.
Okay, do we have, what do we have left here in culture and recreation? Is there any other, scroll?
You have
Let's go.
Recreation, Cultural Council, Historic Commission, and Memorial Day. And those were all unanimously voted on by the board. And Cultural Council was a split.
Anybody have any other questions on these? I'll make a motion. Let's see,
Lines 86 through 90.
yeah. Motion is to accept the select board approved amounts for items 86 through 90 under cultural recreation.
I seconded.
Right? Any further discussion on those?
No,
Okay, roll call, Scott, aye.
Mary,
Heidi, I.
Cliff, eye.
Right, passes 4-0.
the library was lines 84 and 85,
Yes.
Thank you.
because I didn't say that in.
No, you didn't.
Sorry.
Well, because, well, I don't know if you want to take a final vote on that once I get the final numbers. You could go either way, or you could go up to the 11,000.
I just wanted to let us have a chance at getting all these numbers in. if we
Gotcha.
can.
Okay,
Um,
let me actually try this. So I'm just gonna assume the higher number for right now then on the expenses because I don't know how much it would be reduced by.
That makes sense.
So I added 11,000 to the wages line item and kept expenses level funded at this time.
Do we scroll up to the, like I say, we already covered debt and interest,
Yep,
right?
we
There's
did.
nothing. So next we've got the
You did
human
human
services.
services, that's all set.
Yes.
Now you have public works and facilities,
What lines?
62 through 72. Those were all unanimously voted by the select board. With
Mm.
reductions, they did reduce the streetlights down to 4,000 and that's it for these lines.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the select board recommended cost for items 62 through 72 under 400 public works and facilities.
Second the motion.
Right? Any further discussion here? Okay, roll call, Scott, aye.
Heidi, I.
Cliff, eye.
Right, passes 4-0.
Now you're back at public safety.
And does that cover everything? Or do we, how far does it go down?
You haven't taken any votes on in
Yeah,
public
okay,
safety
so it
right
goes
now.
down to
That's
Lines.
line
select board day.
61.
Yep,
It's
so
the
that's lines 45 through 61. All unanimously voted by the select board.
Those are all cut, right? Yeah.
They voted the town administrator recommended budget.
Okay, anybody have any other discussion on these?
No.
No,
Okay, so the motion is to recommend the select board recommended recommendations for items 45 through 61.
Yep.
Under category 200 public safety.
I seconded.
All right. Any further discussion here?
no,
A roll call, Scott, aye.
Mary, I.
Heidi, I.
Cliff, eye.
All right, passes 4-0. Okay, but do
And I
we,
believe you finished general government last time,
Yeah.
so now you are back down to intergovernmental. Did you vote everything under? You did, you voted everything under miscellaneous benefits insurance. So now you're back to intergovernmental. And actually you voted everything here except for Berlin Boston.
Mhm.
yeah, can you scroll down just a little bit to the 0.5% numbers?
Sure.
So the number there is what, 75? 583? And there's been
And again,
11,000 was
approximation.
went to the libraries.
Scott, you have someone in the audience raising a hand with a question. It
Who's
looks like
the,
it's Peg.
Is it Peg?
It is Peg.
Okay, we can bring Peg on.
All right, give me 1 second. Sorry, Peg, if you were there for a while, I didn't see you. Uh,
That's right. I thought you meant out here and I was like, wow, I didn't see Peg this whole time.
She magically appeared. Hold on, I got to promote her on this one.
That's the virtual one, not the. real
Don't
one.
worry, now I'm working.
Maybe she's answering a question way back when we
She
were.
might have been, her hand's still up, so maybe not. Sorry, Peg. I'm trying to bring you up. Give me a second. Allow to talk. Okay. Peg?
I'm here.
Hey,
We hear you.
All I wanted to do was, extend an invitation if needed to the select board on Monday. I don't know if that will help. We're gonna talk about budget, so Kristen, I know that we're talking agenda tomorrow, but just wanted to throw it out there, if it's an option to you guys. That's all I got.
You mean for FinCom to come on Monday?
Yeah, I didn't know. I don't know, like, timing. Where we're meeting Monday and then you guys are meeting Wednesday and then the warrant has to whiz out the door the following day.
Oh, if Monday was a better day than
Yeah,
Wednesday,
yeah, I didn't know.
combine it.
Up to you. Just wanted to throw it out there. That's all.
Okay, we'll see. I think let's discuss at the end here.
See
Okay.
What our,
schedules are.
what our schedule is. Thank you, Peg.
You betcha.
Okay, so can you go back to the Berlin Boylston budget line item?
Mhm.
So right now, our last, what was our number? Let's see here. So the number that's up there is the latest of what we understand the schools are
Correct.
requesting, right?
Correct. And again, we don't have a final number here. But what I would ask is, do something similar to what the school committee did. Do you generally support, not support? And then we can get a vote on the final number once we have the final number from the district tomorrow.
Well, I'd like to at least put in a number that we recommend.
Sure.
And so can you, scroll down to the number here. So we have, go down at, because we're in, let's see, using is this, what were we using? 3.5? This is
Right now it's at,
4%.
well, let me just make sure. I believe it's at 4. Yep, it's at 4 right now.
And what is the deficit there?
The deficit is 143,564.
But you have not adjusted that regarding the library one, right? But you left the library numbers as the same.
I
right?
haven't pointed the budget pointed the budget to your budget yet. So no, I have not adjusted that for the library.
Okay, so right now that still
That's
has
gonna
the
add
approximately
11,000.
right now this does not have the 20,000 increase from the library.
Correct.
Okay,
Which is
so,
11,000 increase.
okay, the 11,000 increase to the library
Yep,
is
so you
missing
would need to add that on there.
from this number. What is it? So it's 143,564. So adding 11,000 makes it 154,564. And can you go back to the schools? And for the requested amount, which is what, 9,159,750?
Approximately.
Reduce that by 154,564. What's that number? 9 million. I just want a number to make a motion.
What was it? 154,
Well, let's see.
964, you
750.
said?
One 154,
Oh,
564.
564, sorry.
Which makes it 9,005,186. Once you have that number. So basically, this is the motion I'll make here. This would be a 4% levy increase. The motion is for line item 96 under 800 intergovernmental expenditures to recommend an amount of $9,005,186.
Second.
We have a second? All right, any further discussion on this?
So just to be clear, that's the number that's up there. No, it's not the number. It's 9005.
It's the last number in that chain.
Yes. So this is number accounting.
Number.
Yes, so this is using a 4% levy increase, which is where we've tried to be each of the last 2 years. And it is minus the 11,000 for additional for the library.
Yeah.
So any other questions? Are we all set for vote? Mary, any other?
So we had requested a reduction in operating assessment by 207.
Thousand, they've made essentially 10,000, 5,000 from OPEB from BMS. And we're saying 5,000, a total of 15,000 from Tohoto, but we'd be at like 35% of that. So probably slightly more than 5,000, but we'll see what the exact number. But right now we're using the number of 5,000. So that was a reduction of 10,000.
Okay,
And the capital's been reduced to 247
well,
approximately.
but the capital is.
Yeah, because the capital's coming from free cash, which is our tradition, and it's reflected in the budget. There's that added
Yeah, so
in.
I'm focusing on the operating assessment. So Boylston asked for a reduction, operating plus Tohoto debt plus capital by 685,317, right? To get to that 500,000 increase that they put as their target. So I just want to make that really clear that what we got back from the district didn't get near that 207,000.
That is correct. It was like
Which-
approximately 10,000.
Which represents at least 1% increase on the levy, that amount that that wasn't reduced. That's the impact. It's about 1% on the levy.
It's 1.5, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's actually closer to 1.5 because if we go up by
75,000.
0.5 points, you're looking at yes, it would be another point to get completely close at. It's at 154,564. And if you're looking at right there, the 75,583 is a 0.5 increase. So you need just a slight more than a point there.
One question for you while you're at your discussion. So the select board hasn't had an opportunity to discuss this yet. And obviously, again, your budget, I know you usually do take input from the select board.
right.
I don't know if you might at all be open to discussing it with them on Monday.
I think that makes some sense. Yeah. I mean, and I'm looking at the two towns, and I've been saying about this, Berlin has about 2/3 of the students. It's
1/3.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
I followed you.
Yeah, right. So Boylston's got 2/3 of the students. Berlin has 1/3. And I look at the increases. So when I look at this March 25th budget, the dollar change for Berlin is roughly 571,000. The dollar change for Boylston is roughly 488,000. The dollar change, the increase. So I have that right?
I haven't done that
Slides-
math, so I
Slides
can't.
2 and 3, it's on slides 2 and 3,
Um,
right? So I come back to those fundamental principles, and last year, their respective increases with Boylston was 500,000. Berlin ended up somewhere like 830,000. So this is why I keep saying we can't keep doing that to the residents in Berlin. It's simply, I know there's differences in the schools. I understand that, but I'm not happy with that result. Let's put it that way. The relative, handling of this. And I don't know what the previous year was, but I know Boylston the previous year it's a similar kind of thing. It's just not,
Right, understood. Actually, can we just double check on the calculation here? Because something, I'm just looking at this, doesn't quite add up.
Which calculation?
I'm not sure if the reason I say it doesn't quite add up, a 0.5% increase is $75,583.
Mhm.
Assume 11,000 goes to the library, that leaves 64,583, which should leave a deficit of the schools. We've already known that they went from 207, dropped 10,000 to 197, and you subtract 64,583, we should have a number closer to 134,000 some dollars. Are you sure we don't have the 20,000 still somewhere stuck in there for the library? Because it's off by
We
20,000.
might, because remember the budget right now, the whole thing is pointed at the select board numbers. So I'd have to change the whole
Okay.
thing.
All right, so, okay, I need to amend my
So-
motion
Hold
dollar
on.
amount because X is not exactly correct.
All right, I can,
And actually, we don't need it right down to the dollar anyways. I'm just going to amend the motion.
hold on, I'm correct, or I'm tentatively putting in the amount. Is that right? This brings you 144?
Let's see, where's 144? So, oh, you mean the
Deficit.
deficit? That's not counting the 11,000 for the,
That is capital. I'd have to go back and recheck everything. I don't want to give you the incorrect amount. There's been a few things that have changed tonight.
oh, actually, we did have the $1,500 for the cultural being placed in. All right, I think we'll just double check on the number. Okay, let's just stick with the number for the motion. We can calculate in the math and make sure we have the final details by Monday. If we meet with it, assuming we meet with the select board, worst case by Wednesday. So we'll stick with the 9,005,186 number. So any further discussion?
Could you repeat the whole motion just so I? make sure I
Yes, the whole
understand it?
motion is go, can you scroll it to the, so I can see the numbers to the left,
Oh,
Kristen?
are you asked?
Yeah, he wants me to repeat the motion.
Do you want to?
For the schools, go up to
I
the
can't.
schools. And I just want to be
So I
able to
need
see
you to
the
repeat it.
number, the first column. I can't see the,
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
okay.
96,
yes.
line 96.
So the motion is for line item 96 under 800 intergovernmental expenditures to recommend an amount of $9,005,186. That's what the motion was.
Thank you.
It was seconded.
Yep.
So I think we've had our discussion. So roll call, Scott, aye.
Mary, no.
IDI.
Cliff, aye.
All right, that passes 3-1. Again, we can, we'll double check. The goal is to have it where we're at a 4% levy. I'm not sure. I think it might be a little bit low, but not, it's not like it's something that's erasing that deficit.
Right, and remember, that's a target because as we all know, things could shift, so.
Right.
But I'd rather do it by dollar amount, like you need to do it by a specific dollar amount.
Right. So do we have any more? That was the last one, right? Oh, we had the capital item. We have not voted on
You've
capital.
not voted on capital, that you have not voted on the warrant articles either.
Yeah, so we just wait for the, do it on the individual warrant items or,
No, I would vote on the capital's in here.
Yeah.
We can do that if you'd like. This is
Yeah.
the capital plan.
oh, this is the full capital plan.
Kristen, is it in the drive?
It is, it's under capital plan, it's the 5th tab.
Okay, can we go through all the items here and what was approved?
Make it bigger so you can see it. I tried to color code them. So let me just give you a summary for the minutes, and then I'll go back into the individual line items. The approved amounts were ambulance receipts reserved, which is the receipts collected obviously from ambulance using $450,000. Using $274,403 in free cash. And using $208,774 in public safety mitigation funds. Now, this does not include the school capital because you just voted that as part of the larger assessment number. So just to clarify. So what's in green would be your public safety mitigation funds. That comes from the malls in Riverbridge. That is forestry gear replacement, rescue tool replacement, a CPR assist device, and turnout gear for the fire and EMS department. Fire overhead door replacement. The bay doors in the building are, as you know, having air leaking out issues. And then police firearm upgrade replacement and some communications upgrades to mobile data terminals, phone systems, radar, and tri-band. So those items total the $208,774 out of public safety mitigation. Any questions on those? All right. The orange here represents the ambulance receipts reserved. Again, that's a separate fund. That is replacing A2. There is currently just under $600,000 in ambulance receipts reserved. We typically use that funding to buy the new ambulance. It is at least 30 to 35 months out, just like the one that we've been waiting for. And at that point, A2 will need to be replaced. So in order to get in the queue before steel, metal prices and aluminum and everything else goes up, the capital committee did recommend that funding. Any questions on ambulance receipts reserved? All right. And then the blue is the free cash funding that was recommended. The municipal building sidewalk repairs. If you've walked on them, you can fall, and that's a major trip hazard that was identified by the facility study. An F450 replacement with plow for 95. The mower vac system needed to be replaced. And then 3 repairs at the library, the sidewalk parking lot, the retaining wall, and the door replacement, along with the mower for the cemetery. So those blue line items totaled up to the $274,403. Any questions on any of those?
When I do the minutes, I don't have to go back and look at your chart.
And if you, yes, and if you have any questions, email or call me.
I
and I'll
will.
be happy to help.
Because it's too much information for me to
I
type.
totally get it.
All right, so how do we want to have a motion for this?
So your motion would be, if you'd like to do it all together, you could make a motion to approve the FY26 capital plan and its total amount. You could break it down, but I think you would be fine doing the total amount for the $933,177.
Any other questions on this?
That's great. Give me that number again, 9 something.
933,177.
Thank you.
And then if you want to break it down,
Yeah, I can refer to the chart.
yeah, it's right.
Got it.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, so I'll make a motion to approve the recommended FY26 capital plan totaling $933,177.
Second it.
Any further discussion? Okay, roll call, Scott, aye.
Mary, I.
Heidi, I.
Cliff, I.
All right, capital plan passes 4-0.
Do you want to go through the warrant articles?
Yes, let's look at those.
10 minutes.
You give me 10 minutes? Oh, I can go fast, but Cliff might not be happy with you.
Well, she
Um,
doesn't care if I'm happy or not.
Come on, Cliff, you should know shorthand.
All right, so this is the draft warrant for town meeting. Actually, one article has been removed, and that was putting funding into general stabilization for this year. So it is now a 24 article warrant, and I will go right to the ones that require a FinCom vote for you.
Oh, thank God.
We have to skip Article 1. I am just waiting to confirm, but I believe we only have one prior year bill. I have given the departments until Friday to just confirm that number, but so we will have to come back to Article 1 if someone can make a note of that. Article 2 is the transfer of free cash to the Conservation Open Space Fund. This is in accordance with the Salmon Pond Mall Mitigation Agreement. It is $41,666.76. It is less $8,333.24 that was previously overpaid by the mall to the town.
Is this like our last payment?
One more,
There is one more.
26.
This is,
In calendar year, or in,
well, this is like our 29th, right? It was in 30 years.
right, we get paid, we got this payment in 25 and we'll get one more in calendar year 26.
Okay, so,
It was from when the mall opened.
right, it was 30 years that
Yeah,
they'd be
so
paid.
96
So this is the
to
29th
26. Yep,
year.
this
Okay,
is.
I move that we recommend this transfer.
Seconded.
all right. Any other discussion? Okay, roll call, Scott, aye.
Mary, I.
Heidi, I.
Cliff, I.
Are you wanting me
Anyway,
to share my screen?
Article 2 passes
He
4-0.
He needs cue cards.
I can kind of see him lurking out of the corner of my eye over there, so
Kristen,
hold on.
is there in the FinCom file
It
a
is.
draft?
It is.
Okay.
I pulled this up from the Google Drive.
Okay, great.
Yep. Article 3 is a request from the library to repurpose some capital funding that they have from a 2006 article. Just so you know, the capital committee did unanimously vote this recommendation. They are asking to move the remaining funding, which is $14,775, to repurpose an underutilized space in the building, updating interior space for shelving for children's books, a gathering space for teenagers, a seating area, and a meeting space. Expenses would include shelving, furniture, and paint for the lower level. So this is existing funding that was initially for the design and engineering of a new library from 2006. They would like to repurpose it so they can actually use it.
I know it was the first year I was on the finance committee, so. Okay, do we have a recommendation?
I move that we recommend this transfer of $14,775.
Yes, Article 3.
3, yeah.
Oh, sorry. I went down.
Do we have a second?
I seconded.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, roll call, Scott, aye.
Mary, I.
Heidi, I.
Cliff, I.
Okay, great. You already voted on Article 4, which is the capital plan that we just discussed. As you see, I haven't filled it in yet, so that's why we voted on it on the other screen. Article 5 is the operating budget that you've already voted on. Article 6, recommending transferring $50,000 to the OPEB stabilization fund. The current balance is $85,000.
I move that we recommend Article 6.
Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Any other discussion? Okay, roll call, Scott, aye.
Mary, I.
Heidi, I.
Cliff, I.
All right, passes 4-0. Article 6.
Article 7 is still in there because they did want me to run this by you because of the high capital needs on both the town and school side and the fact that we have just shy of $2 million in general stabilization. The select board recommended not putting the normal 10% into general stabilization this year. So if the FinCom is open to that, I will just remove that article from the warrant for this year. It's up to the FinCom.
Do we want to just table this and discuss it next week to finalize it, or you want to?
I think that makes sense, Scott, to have the direct conversation with the select board on this.
Yeah.
I'm generally not opposed to doing that, but I'd like to think about it a bit.
Okay, yeah. Let's try and do what we can. We'll stop in 5 minutes.
Okay.
With only the last discussion about being whether we're available for our
Right.
meeting Monday with the select board.
Okay. Article 8 would be $10,000 to fund a classification and compensation plan update. This current plan is 6 years old. It's an FY20 plan. You typically update them every 3 to 5 years, and ours is especially outdated because it is pre-COVID.
So this is the personnel classification and compensation.
Yeah, it says planning board. It's actually coming from me to the select board. But yes, this is the one that personnel does. I gotta fix that. Sorry, I don't know why it
I
says planning
move
board.
that we recommend Article 8.
Okay, do we have a second? Any other discussion? Okay, roll call, Scott, aye.
Heidi, I.
Cliff eye.
Okay, Article 8 passes 4-0 or recommended.
Article 9 is to create a special article for building and vehicle maintenance and equipment. This was initially a request on the capital budget from the fire department. The recommendation from the select board was to extend this into a general building, vehicle, and equipment budget for any emergency unanticipated expense related to maintenance of buildings and vehicles, as well as equipment. The funding would carry over year to year and be replenished at future town meetings as needed. Use of the funds would require approval by the select board, and any individual purchase of 10K or more would require approval from the capital planning committee.
Yeah, this is consistent with all we have discussed about this concept of maintenance coming from free cash.
Correct.
I move that we recommend this article.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? I guess one question I would have is, as we get this to a, assuming that it's not depleted every year, would this be look at something maybe the reserve fund would be cut back on over time?
Right, so this would be to lift some of that pressure off of the reserve fund, and then as we look at it, we could potentially scale that back if possible. This would allow a little bit more access for those specific allocated purposes, and this is a common thing that cities and towns are starting to do, is allocate almost a little mini reserve fund for the building and vehicle maintenance, because it's such a problem to predict what's gonna go. Especially since we haven't been real good at maintaining all of our things over the years, which we're starting to try to do.
So, I mean, even early on here, I mean, if we did put,
Oh,
50,000,
Thinking.
would we, I mean, possibly something to think about for next week?
could
We
you?
come back and reduce our reserve fund some, not 50,000, but
Good point,
whether
Scott.
it's
Yeah.
5,000,
Good point.
15,000.
Maybe a bit. Just remember all those, the 250,000 we cut from the town budget expenses that may come back on us on the reserve fund. So,
Yeah,
but
we,
yes, maybe a little. I could see a bit of an offset
The
there.
razor to thin budget we're going on town operations is another reason that this is a very important article.
Agreed.
So there may not be room in the reserve fund to do much more. I don't know.
Okay, any other discussion on this? Okay, roll call, Scott, aye.
Mary, I.
Heidi, I.
Cliff eye.
Okay, Article 9 recommended 4-0. And,
There's only one more.
well, there's only. one.
They're all front loaded, the budget numbers.
Okay.
Cable access, their budget, that comes from the PEG access grant through charter. They're asking for $68,010 for their that says 25, FY 26 budget.
And this is what article?
Article 12.
Article 12.
And this is funded from where?
PEG access, so that comes from an assessment on cable bills through charter to the town.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I move that we recommend Article 12.
We have a second? Okay, any other discussion?
A quick question.
Yep.
It says from cable bills, that
Mhm.
doesn't include internet,
No, this is cable.
just specifically cable.
Just specifically cable. Yep, and it happened, this is every town across the Commonwealth. There's a small surcharge on every cable bill. And that's what funds the local cable access channel.
So theoretically, though, those funds will decline.
They have
as
by-
people drop.
Aren't you
Cable.
smart? We're in the process of looking at renewing our 10-year agreement, and they've dropped by about 25% in the
Okay.
last 10 years.
Interesting.
Very true.
They'll come up with a different fee to cover it.
And I lied. There's CPA articles I forgot about, so you may
Well,
want to cut me off.
We'll cover those.
Okay.
So any other discussion on Article 12? Okay, roll call, Scott, aye.
Mary, I,
Heidi, I.
Cliff High.
All right, Article 12 recommended 4-0. All right, we'll just end that here and then we just
Um,
look for meeting with the select board. What did the select board start?
They are going to start their regular meeting at 7 on Monday. They have an executive session first.
Okay, so
So
how are you
7:30
for,
Monday.
well, 7, not 7:30, 7 o'clock.
Okay.
And
Don't come at 6.
Yeah.
The agenda will say 6, but it's executive session is
Oh, I
first.
thought you meant. the
You'll be
executive
sitting there for
session
an hour.
Started at 7.
No, no,
Okay.
sorry. The select board meeting will start at 6. They will
Okay.
immediately go into executive session, so you'll be sitting there for an hour.
Okay,
So I will actually, if you'd like, I will schedule the budget for 7.
okay.
Yeah.
I will speak to Peg about that tomorrow. I don't think that'll be an issue. I'm not.
yeah, is 7 good for everyone?
I'll have to do it virtual.
me too.
That's
I'm out
fine.
of town.
That's fine.
Okay, but yeah.
We can get
do
you
virtual.
up on the screen
Yeah.
virtually.
Yeah, I can attend virtually. for
So
sure.
7 PM on Monday, I will schedule that item. I don't believe there's an issue with that. If for some reason there is a scheduling issue, I will send out a revised email
Okay, I'll post it
and you'll post
tonight.
it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, post it as a joint meeting with the select board, please.
Okay, so that covers everything. So motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye,
Bye.
we're adjourned.
Hold on, let me just log off everything.